Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. One of the first things I noticed about cannabis and other psychedelics when I first experienced them was their ability to open up more expanding expressions of myself. From enhanced creativity to deeper flow states and more, it became immediately apparent to me why so many artists find their way to psychedelic medicines within their lives. Today's guest on the show is a man who I met last year at a local music festival called Gardenfest, and as soon as I met him, I could tell was deeply tapped into not only a high vibration, but in addition, the truest expression of his soul in this lifetime. And in this episode, we dive into his journey of finding psychedelics, overcoming substance abuse, and following his heart into making incredible, conscious music to showcase his journey of life within. So be prepared to be inspired to a whole new level and have a new zest for life as I welcome my brother Cooper Montgomery to the show. Cooper Montgomery, my man, dude, it is such a pleasure to be joined with you here today. You know, as I stated in the intro for all of you guys tuning in, Coop and I got to meet at Gardenfest this past year in Maine, past September. And immediately when I saw you, dude, I was like, this dude's my spirit animal, bro. And we got to share some great volcano bags together and have some great conversations, man. So it's a pleasure to have you here. How's your day going, brother?
Dude, it's going good, man. I got a day off today. Started this new job recently. I ended up having to work yesterday when I usually would have 2 days off. So it's nice to have a day off. And just did a nice little gym sesh before this, little sauna sesh, get my head in a good place. And yeah, man, the flowers are blooming. I'm like looking out my window. We got a big old apple tree. Things are blooming, and yeah, feeling good, man.
Dude, it's an exciting time, man. You know, this time, at least for us on the northern aspect of the world or whatever, when spring is starting and summer's coming, you know, I'm in Boston, so very similar to where we were at in Maine. Oh, yeah. This time of year, it's just like everything turns green because everything's so gray and brown throughout the winter and cloudy and whatnot. And like today, it's like the first 70 plus degree day that we've had here. I recently was in El Salvador and then Austin for 3 weeks. So I came back and had to get reacclimated to like, oh, it's only 50s. And now it's finally hitting the 70s again. So it's a good time, man. But where I really love to start these shows, man, to give great context is, you know, how you first got interested in psychedelic medicines. And guys, we're going to dive into a lot of stuff in Coop's journey, overcoming substance abuse and music and all the things. But before we get to all that juicy stuff, where did this train start for you, man? How did you first get interested in psychedelic medicines?
Cool. Heck yeah. Let's see. And also, feel free to at any point be like, hey, going a little too deep or like,
dude, no such thing on this show, bro.
Cool. That's what I like to hear. So yeah, psychedelics, man. Raised very atheist and pretty pretty anti-drug. And wow, I haven't actually thought about this in a while. I'm about to be 30, so I'm hitting that point where it's like, even the teen years, it's like, whoa, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, dude. I just turned 33, so I feel you, bro.
Yeah. So, would you, I guess I want to ask first, would you put marijuana, would you put that in the category? Okay, cool.
Definitely.
So, yeah. So I think the first time I ever dabbled, marijuana was the first kind of psychedelic medicine, drug, whatever you want to call it, experience I had. I think that was 14 or 15, so pretty young, not like the youngest I've ever heard, but still pretty young. And I remember it kind of coming into the picture out of definitely out of an aspect of rebelliousness, just of, you know, in this culture, there's just not a lot of, I think, good quality conversation around this stuff. And I never really had DARE program, and I've been seeing so much recently about how the DARE program actually led to higher usage of drugs, and unfortunately a lot of the bad ones too. But like I don't remember having a DARE program, maybe like one assembly once, and then my parents were just on the page of just like no, and then I'd be like, you know, maybe try to open the conversation, why, and then it would just kind of be like, because, you know, that kind of conversation, just because we are the leaders and that's it. Boom.
Because we
And the
said
conversation.
so.
Yeah. So then, I had some friends around me who, for a while, I was kind of like that straight edge kid. Like, I was like, no, man, it rots your brain. Like, my friends are doing it and they're peer pressuring me. And I think I probably went like a year where I kind of was, they started smoking. I was staying strong or whatever. And then one day, it's actually a funny story. The first day I smoked, for whatever reason, my friends decided to prank me. So they had me smoke oregano first, but I had no idea. And I was so nervous. I got these nervous laughs. So like, I'm just like giggling, laughing, like thinking this is like happening. And then they're like, bro, that actually wasn't marijuana. And I'm like, what the fuck? But then we like took our bikes. This was back in the biking days, biking around. I kind of grew up like outside of Flagstaff. So very rural. It was like slowly turning into suburbs a little bit, but like right on the edge of national forest. So like we were just like this little bike gang. We just bike around everywhere. And finally we went and actually consumed marijuana, and I could definitely tell for sure.
This is different.
Yeah. So that was like, that got me into it. And it was definitely, I guess some people out there, it's like they smoke it and then they're like, I don't want to ever do that again. I was one of those people. I was like, I want to do this again.
Yeah.
I definitely want to do this again. Like it was just a trip. It was really incredible. I remember having this very like interesting experience of going very inward, my normal experience of this material world seeming very far away. Like my friends are talking to me or like talking around me right next to me, but they just seemed so far away. It was just such an interesting thing. And so that was like my journey into marijuana. And again, this is kind of coming from just pure experience, having no idea what I was supposed to be experiencing or anything. And then, just slowly over time, it's like, one, money wise when you're young, but definitely it started picking up usage wise and, starting to kind of be known as one of the stoner kids at the school. I also went to a prep school where it was very like, I was one of like 3 or 4 melanated kids there. And 2 of those kids were my brother and sister. But I was always kind of class clowny, and then started kind of coming in. And then I guess, some people would maybe even consider alcohol as a psychedelic maybe, but then alcohol was the next thing that kind of came in. Luckily that never was a huge thing. I had a, kind of couple years into high school where it was definitely like, let's try and party whenever we can and, get extremely intoxicated. But luckily, thank God that one never became a problem, because that one is that's a brutal one.
Yeah. Wreaks havoc.
But then, towards I think, at the end of high school year, I took Molly for this first time, or MDMA. Had an incredible, wild experience that night. And then mushrooms were like kind of the first big one where I felt really like a shift, something really shifting inside of me and opening and changing perspectives. Yeah, that was that first mushroom trip was a huge one. And then, after that, I ended up not going to college right away, and spirit and just the flow. Next thing I knew, I was flying down to Brazil to go work on organic farms. And that was a very sober time of my life. And then I went to Peru after a month. And then that's where like marijuana started showing back up again. And then actually for the first time, LSD came into my life. So I had a beautiful experience with that. And then funny enough, a lot of people, they go down to Peru and they do ayahuasca, but like when I went down there, I had no idea what ceremony was. I barely even knew that indigenous cultures were like even around anymore, and like that their practices were around anymore. So she brought me closer, actually. So I spent two or 3 weeks in the jungle, along this river in a tree house in this mango tree with a couple friends, and it was right across from an ayahuasca shack. This like old Australian woman owned this little hut. She had domesticated 2 monkeys somehow, and so like, but that was my first experience with ayahuasca, was her just bringing me close to her and being like, I'm just going to like let you have many nights going to sleep, like with the ikaros playing and kind of hearing the ceremony going and the jungle. And then she's like, and then I'll meet up with you in a few years after that, and we'll have our full meeting and I will rock your world.
Dude, that is amazing, bro. I mean, what a cool trajectory too, you know, like, and yeah, like we're going to dive much deeper into a lot of different intricacies in what you just said. But, you know, I think one of the things that's very interesting is that one thing I knew about you, the second meeting you, was that you, like I, like to play the role of the jester, right? We're a very happy-go-lucky individual, class clown, like those kind of things. And I feel like our archetype really enjoys cannabis, like specifically many different medicines, right? This whole world. But, you know, I find that many of us find like a rooting in cannabis because cannabis is like the first plant that made me laugh at the hilarity of the world that we live in, right? How serious we take ourselves, how serious we take the world, how serious we take all these different steps of our lives, right? Not to say that there isn't a good point in putting effort into life, but like the seriousness, right? Like the adulteration, as I call it, right? Becoming an adult, right? Like, you know, it's like that Peter Pan quote, you know, growing old may be mandatory, but growing up is optional. And I've always taken that one really much to heart. And I think that many of us that are in this kind of role and kind of seeing behind the lines, we get drawn to these medicines because they're where the laughter is. And we just subconsciously or unconsciously know wherever the laughter is where we want to be. So it's really cool to hear that you had a lot of similarities in that, like I did.
Big time. But for better and for worse.
That's too funny, man. You know, one thing I'm curious on too is when it comes to that first experience you had with mushrooms, you mentioned you had a big shift. Is there any language you could use to describe what that shift was? Because I remember my first psilocybin experience specifically. The cannabis was its own thing. But when I got into psilocybin, I only did a gram my first time, and it was pure laughter medicine, but something deep shifted in me too. And I'm just curious to hear if you could describe it in any terms of words, like what that breakthrough or that experience was like for you.
Yeah, I definitely can. It'll kind of come in a quick little story. So, you know, end up going out into the woods, kind of like a camping sesh with a bunch of like really good friends. And we all eat them. And I think it was pretty much all our first time. And definitely some incredible giggle sessions. And then I remember at one point, like, we're all kind of sitting around the fire, and I'm having the most hilarious memory of my friend, like his camping chair broke, and he was like stuck in his camping chair. It was like eating him, like folding over. It's hilarious. And then of course the mushrooms just like exacerbated and exaggerated the whole thing. But then I remember I was sitting there, and it's a very funny story. So I remember sitting there, and all of a sudden, like my clothes felt like they were suffocating me, and they were so uncomfortable. And I was just in my head, and then something just said like, you need to like get naked. This is where it all started. So, you know, in the culture that we grow up in, you know, once you hit that certain age, it's like naked is a private thing. And then even in the guys' locker room, you know, it's still kind of like, you know, eventually when you get older, the guys' locker room guys are pretty like, you know, you're just open about it. But like in high school and stuff, you're like still, you're not really fully open and expressing in your nudity. And so all of a sudden I hit this like blockage where I was like, I want to do this, but there's this wall here that, you know, I didn't realize then, but it was some sort of programming that was like, you can't do that. That's not civilized. That's not human. And then for whatever reason, you know, asking for help is really hard. And for whatever reason, I had the courage in this moment where I was like, guys, my fucking clothes are eating me alive. And like, I just want to fucking get naked. Like, just like, and then I was like, does someone like want to get naked with me? Can we all just get naked? And then it was kind of like one of those weird mushroom moments too, where like half the people were like, and then funny enough, one of my main homies was like, bro, I kind of feel you, dude. Like, let's do it. Let's get fucking primal with this shit. So we like start walking off, and we're deep in it, first time ever, you know. And it was funny because some of the ladies that we were with, they had like taken their shirts off at some point, and it's a little bit more comfortable, I think, for women to be naked together. So like they're all standing in this pool of water and like titties out and just like having a grand old time. So the funny thing was we still had this thing where it was like, we can't be naked in front of these women. So like we have to go kind of like off, and they actually like were following us. They're like being like kind of goofy. And so at one point we were like basically stripped down to our underwear, and we get to this, so interesting, literally this crossroads. There was this creek, and there was a fence. And for whatever reason, our mushroom brains were like, the easiest way to do this is to get in the water and go under the fence, because there was like, I don't know, who knows, mushroom thinking.
Yeah.
So that's when we're like, all right, this is the time. So we like take our underpants off, get in the water, go under this fence, and come out on the other side, bro. And that was literally like one of the biggest transformations in my life, because then basically we like get out there, we're on this other side, and then we like kind of turn around. We're like 10 feet from each other, and we're just like standing there naked, and we're just like, whoa, like this is just what we are. Like this is just is what we are. And then basically ever since that moment, like it is pretty damn impossible to have me near a body of water with clothes on. And like it brought me into this freedom of like, one, like nudity doesn't have to be sexualized. Also, like, what was that programming that like wanted to tell me that like I need to be covered, and like I need to all of this? And it led me to this great freedom, because there is not like one of the most freeing experiences is to sit naked with a bunch of other naked humans at the river in like full comfort and just like in expression of yourself. Like that is one of my favorite things to do in this human experience. Like one of my favorite things by far. And I pretty much believe that without that mushroom trip, you still see a lot of our culture where it's like you still have to be covered up at the river or whatever, like there's a lot of that. So it just immediately showed me like, whoa, there's some like societal programming within me. And that's what it helped me start seeing that. And then it just has unfolded from there.
Dude, that's so funny you bring that up, man, because a big part of what Rachel has helped me with is this exact thing. I'm a very open person. I pretty much wear short shorts and that's it usually. But there was this block, right? Especially when we go to a nude beach in Martha's Vineyard called Aquina Beach. And there was this block, right? Where Rachel's been going there since she was a kid with her family. So they're not nudists per se, but like they've been nude their whole life. When I met Rachel, it'd be nothing to go over her parents' house and have her walking around naked, like when we're on the beach, her parents will be naked, and it's just not even a thing. And it forced me to reckon with my own like weird societal programming around this, because I consider myself a very red-pilled person, but like anyone, right? Like there's always things that are going to pop up as part of the human experience. Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that, because I will say that being able to break through that has been so fucking liberating, man. Like being able to be around other humans that are naked and be like, hey, this is actually our final form or our original form. And it was funny because there's a guy named Aaron Alexander.
Oh yeah, love that guy.
Yeah, and he put up a post, it was probably like 2 or 3 years ago, where he was naked on a slack line. You couldn't see anything, right? But like, it was obvious he was naked. You could see his butt cheeks or whatever. Uh-huh. And it was funny because one comment that he pinned to the top was someone saying like, you're so irresponsible. Oh my goodness. How could you ever? This is so embarrassing, right? And his line back is still one of my favorite lines I've ever heard. He was basically like, yeah, I totally agree with you. I can only imagine how the doctors felt when I came out naked. It was probably really awkward for everyone, right? AKA not whatsoever. And so it was like one of those funny things where until you're ready to go out and be that person that is fine to strip down, you can't help other people liberate that as well. And so it's amazing that, you had your buddy who was like, fuck it, I'll do it. And the women started, of course. And I do find very similar that women have, and again, this is as a man saying this, but from what I've learned from Rachel, I mean, Rachel is like the starter of every naked party that we're a part of. Nice. And not to make it sound weird or whatever. It's just like whenever we all get together, she's like, I don't want to wear my swimsuit when I go in the water. I'm like, I don't care at all, right? And everyone else is like, okay, cool. So she starts that party a lot, and she's been that person in my life, but in many other people's lives too. And it's just so liberating, because you're right. Like nudity does not equate to sexuality whatsoever. And I think that's one of the other challenges that we've had, is because, I mean, it's obviously multiple layers deep, but I think that because we've made such a big push to like cover these things, now like it's like people are like, well, they must be really sexual, or they must be like, we need to see them. And it's like, well, if we actually just practice nudity like a lot of indigenous cultures do, and it was normalized, it would just be normal, you know? So it's funny you mentioned that, man. Yeah, it's real shit.
It's real shit, man. And it's like, yeah, just another one of those places, one of those little microcosms where you can kind of see in our culture, like just again, one of those disconnects from what I feel like is, you know, source, truth,
Definitely.
God, creator, whatever you want to call it. You know, it's like we have so many different layers and, you know, blockages, walls, whatever you want to call them, that are keeping us from like our ultimate, you know, true nature.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. And speaking of blocks and limitations and things like that, I'm not sure if those things led to any substance abuse issues or things like that. I know that you've gone through, but you know, I'd love to hear a little bit about that aspect, because you know, I think it's very important, even within the psychedelic space, right? Not that ketamine is necessarily a psychedelic, but there are certain medicines that fall into the psychedelic category, again, even if they're not classically designated as a psychedelic, that people do fall into patterns of dependency with, cannabis being one of them, of course, ketamine, but even some other medicines too. And I'd be curious to hear that journey for you, like really how that started. Maybe, I know you're a very aware individual, like if you're aware at this point of any of the things that maybe led you there, because I think this is super key to get clear on in the shows, because I want people listening to understand maybe what some of the signs are, you know, because the Ego and Default Mode Network are really good at giving you really good stories to support dysfunction within relationship with medicines or things like that. So I love hearing from people that have traversed that realm and come out the other side, because I think a lot of what you're going to share could hit really close to home for some of the listeners. So what did that journey look like for you, and how did it start? How did it end up? Things like that.
Yeah, man. So addiction is an interesting thing, because, you know, as I have had, you know, the experience of it in my life, and just learning more and more that like it is this whole material realm. Some would call it Maya, whatever you want to call it, the Matrix. All of this stuff is addictive. It all has the ability to allow us to escape from our internal world, our feelings that are there, you know. And so where I think it started for me was, you know, growing up, I love my parents, all my heart. But, you know, they adopted me when they were pretty, so start with there. So I was adopted. So there's probably one thing there. Another thing too, that I've been thinking about a lot recently is I was snipped when I came out. So I think that was another thing that I haven't looked into any data or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a huge correlation there. It's just another initial trauma that probably, you know, you get born right away. And I learned recently they don't even use anesthetic.
Yeah, which is fucking crazy, dude.
So like, are you snipped?
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're blessed, brother.
Blessed. I know. My parents were not the most spiritual people, or are not the most spiritual people, but they got that dead on, man. So
nice. Yeah. So my parents were, you know, they're both botanists, scientists, so they had fallen into that. Just, you know, whoever started that thing, like they somehow believed that, they thought that was the right way. So that happened right off the bat. And then they were both born like late 40s, actually. So their parents are coming out of depression, fucking all the world wars. Yeah. And I never got to meet my grandfathers. And I did get to meet my grandmothers just a little bit. And one of them was like, I can't even remember her saying a word. Very quiet. And the other one was we would call her, she was Grandma Martha, and she would give us this thing called the evil eye. So she would go like one eyebrow up, like you'd be jumping on the trampoline and you just look over and she's like, what are you guys doing? So what I'm basically saying is, this society, especially with going through all that, and then my parents are then raised by them. God bless my parents, but not the best emotional skills. And they were also raised on the side of corporal punishment. So like I got spanked. That was a part of my upbringing. Nothing ever like super crazy, but it was definitely there. And like we had like spanking sticks and stuff like that. But this was, again, they just thought it was normal. They thought we were supposed to teach, like, I remember she'd be like, well, that's what the bear does. The bear smacks their cub around. Like that's how they believed that you were supposed to be raised. So I had that. And then they were very because of their kind of lack of emotional knowing, there's a lot of bickering. So that was always around a lot. So then eventually, this ganja comes in. And I think what happens is basically, I'm growing up as this kid who is, growing up, and life is feeling, for whatever reason, confusing. It's not really making sense in a lot of ways. Like, I'm starting to kind of learn. Like, I remember in 10th or 11th grade, one of my history teachers just dropped all this crazy stuff on us about like how the slave trade, or when like slavery was illegal, it actually didn't really end. It just transformed into the industrial prison system, and like showed us one of the documentaries called Loose Change about 9/11. And so I'm just all of a sudden like having all of these truths that had been given to me are now all shattering. One of them too being that marijuana is evil, smoking it and having this like completely opposite experience. But then I think where, especially because I didn't really have a teacher or a guide for any of this, all of a sudden then I had this thing that made me feel different, and it numbed some of those feelings of confusion, anger. Like, I grow up thinking America is the best country in the world. I can remember when 9/11 happened, and then seeing all this evidence and all of this stuff coming out of like, holy shit, like I've been lied to.
Yeah.
Like lies after lies after lies. So then it's like, it's that fine line again of these medicines of, the hammer, can be great to hammer in that nail. But if you keep hammering that nail, eventually you start breaking the wood, and like shit just gets crazy. So without guidance, then I didn't realize what was happening, where then I'm getting more attached to like, ooh, I don't like the current present reality. That shit is way too fucking confusing. And I can smoke this and I can escape it. And I can go away to a different place. Everything else kind of melts away, brings me into presence. Like I totally, all these Shiva yogis over there. Like I get it, man. It really helps to kind of cut Maya out a little bit, and turn down the dials of Maya and allow you to go very inward. But then there's that fine line too of like, we're here to be in both worlds. And, then if you get out of balance, then you can start kind of trying to escape. And then you get into the point of where then you're frying I know you speak about this a lot, where then you're just frying your endocannabinoid system. Then it gets to the overuse. And then, looking back in my journey, then I start noticing like, oh, this thing that used to get me kind of up, and it would be so fun. And there was always like the adventure, because we'd always have to kind of hide it, Yeah. And then next thing I know, like I'm kind of on my own, and then I can smoke. I'll never forget getting my first house freshman year after like getting home from South America, where like I was free down there too. And I was smoking a lot down there, or not a lot, but like was smoking, and I'm just like on my own. But I'll never forget getting to my first place in Tucson and like sitting on the couch and like breaking my bong out and like being like, whoa, I can just like hit this shit on my couch right now and no one's gonna give me shit. So then then the freedom comes in, and then that then comes with more abuse. You don't really I didn't really have any reflections around me that could really, everyone around me was kind of falling into the same thing. And then cannabis is that weird thing too, where you can be a very functioning addict. Like it's very easy to, for the most part, to keep going. It doesn't fuck you up as much as like heroin or some of these other things where like your whole life is just like quickly freaking destroyed.
Yeah.
So I was just functioning, and then I started mixing tobacco with it. So that was also another thing that made it even more addictive, because then you get that quality thing where then I started noticing I didn't want to smoke straight marijuana, but I also didn't want to smoke cigarettes.
Yeah.
So then it was like I had to have both of them. And then that's a unique thing too, especially too when you smoke them through a bong. Yeah. Then you get this like, because then as you're frying your system more, it's the classic thing with everything. You need more. You want more. Then it doesn't last as long as it did before, and you're always constantly chasing that feeling that it gave you, like in the very beginning, that feeling of peace and whatever. But then it starts getting into that physical system, and then yeah, looking back, it's like then I noticed myself like getting more tired, and then actually like wanting to sleep more, and then wanting to actually fully check out from everything more. And like that was my way. Like I could just do that, and then I could sleep for like a long time, and instead of waking up in the morning and going and doing productive stuff, I could like wake up, smoke, eat a little bit, and then like go right back to bed until I had my like 11 o'clock class or whatever. And so yeah, just numbing more and more with it, but then having the interesting thing of where I could still function, and then also it actually not fucking shit up enough where anyone could really tell that there was any struggles happening. And then also growing up in a society where I was taught by example that you don't talk about your problems. You don't talk about any struggles you're going through. You just go through them and you just keep going. You just keep going. Yeah, that was the first kind of where I started noticing where I was like, whoa, this is weird. Like I'm not really liking this a lot of the time anymore. And I'm wanting to do other stuff, but I keep doing this. So that was where the marijuana got to, like that point. And then, so I already had that. And then the beautiful, beautiful demoness goddess cocaina came into my life. So, yeah, my first kind of love in life, I was like, had just done 2 years in school. And I moved up to Flagstaff because I had finished my associates, fell in love with this girl. She was going to go to Flagstaff. I didn't know what I was doing. I went back to Flag to keep doing school. And then, yeah, one night we're hanging out with some of her friends and they pull out this white powder. And I had just never had the only experiences I'd had of cocaine. Like I'd never had talks with my parents, never had a dare education about it. And then the only education I'd ever had on it was seeing it in the movies, and it looked fucking awesome. Yeah. It's like, oh, that looks fucking cool. So I just didn't, I didn't have enough barriers or any knowledge where it came into my life. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's try it. Did a couple lines, fucking won like 3 or 4 games of pool in a row. And I was like, this is fucking awesome. This is so cool. I love this. Like, and it's that interesting thing too of, there's all this talk about ADHD and whatever is going on. I think it's just what we're labeling the trauma response to growing up and living in this society. You could definitely put me in that category probably. So like these things that are supposed to make you, they actually like, they like calm me down. They put me in the moment. They give me this great body high, and like, I can just focus and just crush, like, and it just makes me feel really good. And so at first it was kind of just a party thing, like I went back up at the Flag and I'm like in this kind of hippie base spiritual culture, whatever is going on there, and a lot of beauty, but also a lot of darkness, and again, a lot of escapism through these medicines that are just tools. So, then it just starts becoming more of a normal thing. And again, I'm just surrounded by these people and then no one's talking about it. And it's just normal. It's just like, cool, we're partying tonight. Hit up the plug. Let's do some blow. And it's just kind of like that. And then this relationship I'm in starts kind of crumbling a little bit, and there's, if we were aware enough, it would have been like, hey, let's take some space and like grow on our own a little bit and then see maybe we can come back, or we just need to not be in this relationship container. But I didn't know how to do that. She didn't know how to do that. Very codependent. And, just in love. And that's, there's an aspect of attachment in love. It's real. It's there. It can get unhealthy. And so then next thing I know, I'm doing it at work. And then next thing I know, I'm doing it when I wake up. And then it's like, you start seeing that dissonance where I'm like, do not drive to your dealer's house right now. Next thing I know, I'm driving to my dealer's house to go get it. And then it's like starting to get freaky. And then I'm starting to kind of look into addiction more. And I'm like, oh shit, this is really fucking happening. And for whatever reason, I could have the conversation with my mom, actually. So I started talking to her and I was like, hey, this is like, if I don't figure my shit out in the next like month or two, like you're going to have to, I got to go to fucking rehab. Like, and she's a funny one. So she was like, well, you better get your shit together because I can't afford that.
Yeah.
And So yeah, I somehow again, it never got to the point of fully like fully destroying everything. Oh hey, I'm on the that's my roommate.
That's too funny.
um so yeah, basically my heart is like hurting really bad, and it's interesting because you look at cocaine and it's an anesthetic, you know, and so it's numbing you. So it literally starts, I'm numbing my heart. My heart is like, bro, you need to not be in this right now. You need to turn your direction to yourself. But I'm just like, nope, like, nope,
Yeah.
nope, nope. You stay quiet. You stay quiet. And then luckily, you know, God, I am very grateful for it, honestly. At the end of this relationship, she actually cheated on me at the end. And she had the strength to be like, dude, like I just got out of a relationship where he cheated on me like 10 times and I just cheated on you. She's like, I am fucked up. And we like, you need to not be with me. We need to not be together. I need to figure my shit out or else I'm going to keep hurting you. And like, God bless her soul. She had that strength to do that. Because then all of a sudden, boom, I'm like alone. That support system that was there is not there anymore. And like, finally, I had this opportunity to like really look at everything. And dude, craziest thing is the second that I realized, whoa, I was putting my entire worth, deeming my entire value off receiving this love from this woman. And also, in a sense, too, from the cocaine. But I just realized I was like, I'm not loving myself one bit. And my value is here all the time, 100% is sourced from inside of here. The second I realized that, within a week, that desire where I thought I was going to go to rehab was gone. Completely gone. Completely gone. And it's still around me. It was still around me. And just like that click, the second that you stop escaping, and you know, I don't know if it's that easy for everyone, but it has been like that for me in my path. Like the second I make that decision and also have that realization, it disappears like that. It is the most strange thing ever. And then to wrap it up kind of quickly, I went 3 years sober from that substance, from the cocaine. And then I had these very interesting winters, which some would maybe call a relapse. Who knows? I never went to a thing where I was like, I am starting my sobriety. Like I never did rehab. I still haven't done rehab. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I went through that. And now that is in the past. We do not want to do that again. But then after 3 years, somehow like it came back into my life, snuck in, and it just got a gnarly hook. It has a gnarly hook. And so I had these like three winters where it was kind of had to go through just that cycle again. And that's the very interesting thing about addiction too, is it's like, it is again, a response to just reality, you know? And it just came in at these times, especially like winter time. And yeah, got me again a few times. And it's a very, very interesting thing. And I guess to kind of wrap it up a little bit, it's my whole goal, like with my music and everything, and is to just try and share and be as real as I can about this journey, just so that, because I know how much it helped me in my journey, sometimes being in those depths and kind of being in those clutches of that, to hear other people that have gone through the same thing and then have risen through it is one of the most beautiful things. So I'm just on that page too, where it's like dropping so much shame comes with it, so much blame, and just trying to, just share my story, that it's like, you can drop that, like that stuff maybe has a little bit of teaching that you can take for a second, that it's like, cool, I don't like that, but then drop that shit, come back to the moment, and like, we are incredibly powerful beings. And especially a lot of us too, it's like we feel a lot, and it is not our fault that these fucking chemicals are out there so easy. It is not our fault that society is this way, that it is so painful a lot of the times, that we're living so different than our ancestors, and there's so much disconnection. And to just try and inspire people like, hey, it is okay, but also like acknowledge that you don't like this, and like you're strong enough to rise from those ashes and keep creating a freaking beautiful life.
Dude, Coop, I love that, man. There was so much beauty in there, man. And, one of the things that I want to articulate right at the bat is, your frame of perspective or your frame of mind around addiction is very similar to mine, because I've dealt with my own challenges with tobacco and cannabis. Those are my main two.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because very similar things happened to me. When I was around 16, 17, I started smoking clove cigarettes, which I was, convinced were not cigarettes. But the thing is, when you try to smoke a pack of those a day, oh, dude, it'll rip your lungs up, bro. Like really bad. So I remember it wasn't too long before we were at a party. Alcohol was involved, obviously, and we did a Wendy's run. This is like, 16 years old, different me, different man, different river, right? But we go to a Wendy's run at like midnight, and I ran out of cloves. And so my friend's like, here, take a Mar bread. So I try it, and I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. But then when I get back to the house, I'm like, hey, give me another one of those, And then by the next day, I'm like, fuck the cloves, right? So I had a couple of years where I was really deep in cigarettes when I was like 18, up to 18, maybe 19, right around there. And then I quit, and I was on like a vape pen for a little while because I was starting to club around this time too. And I'm so grateful that I quit cigarettes before I got into the club scene.
Nice.
But, I've always loved music. And so I was going there and whatever. And then I put down nicotine completely for, 8 or 9 years or so. And then I found a way back into it when I met Paul Chek. Paul Chek is very big on hitting organic tobacco through a vaporizer. And when I got back into it, I noticed a lot of those same addictive tendencies coming forth. But again, different man, different river now. I now knew, like, it's not that tobacco is inherently addictive, right? They've actually done studies. Harvard did a study in 2015 that found that nicotine is not addictive whatsoever. So it begs the question, like, well, what is addictive of that then? And for me, I've always looked at like, okay, I understand that alcohol and heroin and even cocaine and certain medicines do have a physical addicting component, like a certain habit forming kind of like, symptom. But overall, no one chooses, like, why could someone connect with cocaine once and be like, whatever, maybe they don't hate it, maybe they enjoy it, but maybe they do it like once every 5 years or maybe once in their life, versus someone else who finds it and does it more often. Like if it was objectively addictive, it would be the same in every single person. So we know it's not just an objective thing, right? So there's got to be something subjective there. Well, of course, everything in life is subjective. So what I started looking into was, and this is a big part of my cannabis dependency as well, is looking into like, okay, if I don't take the easy path here, if I don't just say, oh, I'm addicted to cannabis, oh, I'm addicted to tobacco, and I actually start asking myself, like, what inside of me is looking for those things, and what is it finding in those things? If I choose to actually believe that this part of me that wants to go towards those things is not like a deviant, hedonistic aspect of me, but maybe it's what it feels is safe for me, then what is its reasoning? And what I found was that, especially with cannabis, I was living in a very disempowered state of reality, very similar to you. One of the first videos I ever watched when I was starting to get stoned, when I was like 16, 17, was Zeitgeist, which goes over 9/11. Yeah. It goes over money, and it goes over religion.
That was one of mine too.
Yeah, dude. And like, so I already had a lot of these, kind of ideas about life. And, again, I was 16 or 17 when I watched it. So from that point forward, I started realizing like, oh, wow, everything's backwards. But I didn't know yet that everything was literally backwards. And I think that the more I learned about that, the more my inner child and my heart started hurting. Yeah. Because it knew what life could be, but it also knew what life was based on like the societal standard. And I think a big part of removing those addictions for me and being able to connect with tobacco every once in a while if I do a podcast and not want to go hit it all day after, or connect with cannabis a couple times a week and not feel the need to just get into it all day, every day like I used to when I was 16, 17. I think a big part of that was realizing like I have all the power in the world to create my own world, my own microcosm within the macrocosm. And in my microcosm, right, with people like yourself, people like the listeners in the show, the other guests that have come on, if we can all get together and make each other laugh and help each other, have great community together and be able to foster that world, well, then it doesn't really matter what's happening in the external world, right? Like, sure, a meteor could hit whenever and kill us all, whatever, right? But also the other thing that was shown to me through many different psychedelic experiences when I was in my period of abstinence was that we are all one, and that life is infinite, and that we were never born and we never die, and that really death as we know it is just the beginning of another chapter. And when you've had that type of experience too, and you couple that with the fact that like, well, hey, if we're just here for an experience and we're here to, evolve our souls and whatnot, then what a great challenge that we chose to incarnate during a time that is so lost, right? That is so confused, because that's why we're here, right? That's why we're all here, and we all do it in our own way, right? And no one's way is the wrong way. It's all subjective. But the idea is if we can turn ourselves into a lighthouse, like with you with your music, or me with my programs or the podcast or whatever, if you can do that and do what you love more than anything, you're going to become that lighthouse. And the people that are ready, right? Because not everyone might be ready in this lifetime. You might need to go through many lifetimes of not figuring it out before your soul is finally ready to figure it out, right? You have to have a foundation laid. But if you can do that and become that lighthouse, the people that are ready in this lifetime to wake up will go towards you the same way that we've gone towards people that are the lighthouses for us. For me, Paul Chek, Aubrey Marcus, all these individuals that for me really showed me that a life could be different than what I was telling myself, right? That the story I was telling myself was not accurate, and that I needed to be able to, or I got to be able to tell myself a better story. So I love the fact that your story has all of those things there in there as well, man, because I knew we were similar, but I didn't know we were that similar, man. So that's super cool. Really cool, man. That's awesome. And one thing I'm curious on for you, bro, is we've touched on the idea of your music and that you're a musician. And guys, for those listening, like when I first met Coop, like I said in the intro, it was at a music festival. And I remember, dude, there was one night where it was me and Rachel that went out there, and our friend Brianna was hosting or doing a little like pop-up tent thing for her kinetic aura readings, which are really amazing. And we decided one night, like, all right, let's eat some mushrooms. And so we hung out right in the grass, right in front of the stage. And dude, I didn't even realize it was you for a second. Like I thought it might be because of the height, but I didn't know right off the bat. But there was some set playing, dude, that I don't even know who it was anymore. I totally forget, but it was like at nighttime. And you were up there. A bunch of people that were other musicians were just hopping on stage. And like, dude, you were doing this fucking vocal stuff. Like, I mean, bird stuff and all this stuff, dude. And it was just so fucking cool, man. And I was blown away because I could tell the freedom you have in expression. And that is something that as a musician myself, I know how hard that can be to do. Like I still get a lot of stage fright. I still get a lot of these things. So I'm curious for you, man, like how did music come into your life in that way? And was it always that way for you? Like, did you always find it so easy to express yourself, or did that come later on in life? And if it did psychedelics play a role in that at all? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Oh yeah, expression, man. Expression. So yeah, music came into my life right off the bat. My parents had me play violin. So I grew up in the classical violin space.
Dope.
And I was always, at first when you're like very young, you're just like, whatever, like you don't really have too much ego and you're just really going with the flow. But then I started kind of, ego started coming in, and yeah, I'm very rebellious in nature. So like right off the bat, like middle school comes around and I'm like, I don't want to fucking practice, like blah, blah, blah. And so it starts to become more of a chore, and something just wasn't aligning. Like I was really, really good too, or like not like the best. I can't remember one of the famous violin players. Like yeah. I was good. And like, 7th grade, I'm like in the symphony, like the top group of string players. Like I'm in that group and I'm like slowly moving up chairs, and yeah, I was good at it. But, right around that time when I start getting rebellious, then weed comes into my life and I was just not having fun with it. And so then my rebelliousness came in really potently. And at one point I just said, I kind of hit a physical stature and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And what the are you guys going to do about it? And so obviously my parents are a little freaked out. But I remember it was so interesting. And it's so interesting how our souls play into all this. I remember my soul coming really through in the moment. I didn't realize it at the moment, but I remember telling my mom, I was like, don't be worried. Like, I don't think music is going to be out of my life forever. I didn't even know what the frick I was talking about, but my soul came through in that moment to kind of comfort my mom in that second. But what it allowed me to do was there was no creativity in the classical. I had some sort of stage fright because we would do concerts, like recitals, and I fucking hated it. And my legs, like I would hit that little perfect point on my ball because you're supposed to kind of move with it, and my leg would start freaking going all woodpecker, and like I hated it. Started, as you do it more, you can do anything ultimately, and you can just force yourself to do it. And I had to do it, and whatever. So, but then yeah, I think 10th or 11th grade, I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. Like I'm not having fun. I don't want to do this, whatever. But then that allowed me to have some opening of space. And then I started beatboxing. That was kind of like one of the first kind of creative things that came into my life where I was like, whoa, I can just like do this and I don't have to read black dots on a fucking thing that some guy wrote 500 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
I can just do this whenever and it's different every time. And I was having fun with it, you know? And like I would do it and my homies would crack the fuck up and be like, yo, let's fucking go. So I started having fun. And then my mom would always, when I was growing up, she would be like, hey, your birth mom had an amazing voice. Like you should sing. But I had been downloaded with some sort of programming that singing was gay. And I did not want to be gay. I did not want to be associated with anything like that. And so I was very, very resistant to that. But then, I went down to South America. And one night I'm sitting in this basement of a house on this farm in Peru and really high off some shitty weed and just chilling. And I hadn't really jammed. Like I could play a drum, and there was this really epic, I call him like a San Pedro clown. He was just like this old expat. His name was Beto. And he was down there just, you know, kind of helping out on this farm and doing a lot of Wachuma ceremonies and just healing his trauma. He was like an old vet and epic dude. And we're sitting there. It's just me, him, and I think one other person. He's just jamming on the guitar, singing. And at one point he starts going, why aren't you singing? Why aren't you singing with me? And he just keeps doing that. And I'm sitting there stoned, like kind of playing this drum. And then I just like start feeling this energy, man, like rising up. And I'm just like, And then, dude, Vishuddha, that's what they call the throat chakra, and is called the Vishuddha in the Buddhist culture, Hindu. I can't remember exactly what language, but it just fucking exploded, man. He was that catalyst to open that. And next thing I know, I'm like, I don't know, I'm not singing with you. I don't know. And like, boom, like it just opened. And then, you know, trippy enough, like really, I have not stopped. I've only sung more and more and more since then. And then it's been this really interesting journey with this music stuff. Cause like, again, growing up, even playing classical violin, like I never had any desire to be a famous violin player. I actually had an interesting experience growing up where like I didn't really, you know, some people have that thing where they're like, like my dad, he knew he wanted to be a fish doctor since he was a kid. Like, so it's so weird to me. Like, I don't get it. I didn't really have dreams. Like my homie in my hip hop group, he's always wanted to be a famous rapper. Like he's always, or for a long time, he's wanted that. And like, I remember, you know, the reason I went down to South America is because I was looking at the college list. They're like, what do you want to study? And I was like, I have no fucking idea, bro. Like, I still have no idea. Like, it was always such an interesting thing for me to like try and choose it, and it was just nothing was really arising. But then, yeah, the music and the creativity. Like, I started singing, and then I got back from South America, and I started kind of dabbling in writing poetry and trying to rap it a little bit. But then one night, a friend showed me Xavier Rudd, Trevor Hall, and Nako Bear, all in one night. I had just started learning guitar. I had just started writing poetry, raps, whatever you want to call it. And within a week, like I just got so inspired where I was like, well, okay, I can just put this to that. So like I had a sick little riff, and then I just started putting stuff on it. And then just, you know, I consider it a gift. Like I literally feel like it's something given to me, that now I have this opportunity to then further share the gift. Because still, even when that started, it was just like, I'm doing this for me. This is just really fun. And just naturally, like, you know, it became more comfortable. So then I would share a little bit more in like group settings. And then, yeah, next thing you know, it's like I'm all of a sudden I finding myself like invited onto stages more, you know? And then next thing I know, I meet this homie who he was kind of like really like, I want to do this. I'm recording and all this stuff. And I was like showing him some of my stuff. And he's like, dude, I'm doing a show. Like, come do a show with me. We did this show. It was one of the first shows I'd ever done. And then just from that, we had a homie who like happened to be walking by, a event producer. And he's like, hey, do you guys like want to do another show? That was freaking awesome. And we're like, cool. We might as well like, let's make some new shit. Like you're on the looper. Like, let's do some loop stuff and we can do some raps. And that was the birth of Psilosapiens. And then it just like, you know, then it started becoming like, oh, this is like something like I can do. And I was like, if I just keep doing this and showing up, like something's going to unfold. Like I still don't even necessarily have dreams of fame or whatever that is, but it is definitely now, music expression is a very, very key point to my life. And it has gotten to the point now where it's just the flow is pretty dang open, and it feels super comfortable, one, to be on stage, and then to be able to like open up to my full expression while I'm on stage, and then inspire, just whenever we light up fully, again, like that lighthouse, whenever we light up, like it inspires other people to light the frick up, and then that ripple effect just goes out.
It's the best, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so grateful that you shared that, because there's a lot of synchronicity between you and I's stories when it comes to this kind of stuff too. Number one, I knew I was interested in the mind when I went to school, but the thing with me is that I'm a 5-1 projector in human design. So that one line naturally is interested in a lot of things at once. And so for me, I've never liked to include one thing. Like, for instance, I teach cannabis, but really within cannabis, I'm teaching everything from holistic health to biogeometry to business to everything else. And that's the way I do it. That's the way I've had to do it. It's like, okay, what's the one thing that I could kind of like put this into as a category so that I can market it and whatnot? But within there, how can I teach everything that people are going to want to know? And I think the other funny thing too is that when it comes to creativity, when it comes to, really unlocking that, it's been a journey for me as well, where, even starting this business and getting in a podcast, and that was a huge aspect of me opening my throat chakra up. And, it's funny because when I was a kid, my mom would always tell me like, oh, you're a really good singer. Like, we should have you in those competitions or whatever. And I was like, whatever. I just like singing in the back of the car. But it was funny because just recently, when I play guitar, Rachel's always like, why don't you sing with it? And I'm like, I've never really learned to sing and play together. But it was funny because last night she was asking me a question, and I noticed that all of a sudden I could keep playing and talk to her. And I was like, I wonder if I'm starting to unlock that, man. So it's really cool you bring that up, man, And the other thing too, being the fact that within music, there is so much ability to have like a lacking of structure, right? Like, and I think that's why for a lot of us, we enjoy music, or at least for one reason, because I know for me, it's a blank canvas every time. There are no rules, right? Like, that's for me why I never got into reading sheet music. I got into scales and stuff, the stuff that would allow me to shred better, because I was a shredder.
Yeah. Nice.
But I was never interested in like the whole classical scene. These days, I actually enjoy bringing some classical elements back into my music, but from a creative standpoint, not like I'm going to play what Bach did 500 years ago or however long ago he existed. So that's super cool, man. Dude, this has been amazing, Coop. I can't wait to get you back on and do a round 2, and maybe we'll do a live one next time we're in person together. I think that'd be dope, man. We'll have you play some music on it and everything.
Yeah, that'd be epic, bro.
Yeah, man. Where can people go to find you, find out about all your projects, not just Psilosapiens, but all the stuff you got going on, man? Where can I send people to find you? And we'll put it all in the show notes, but I'd love to hear it right from your face as well.
Yeah. So like my Instagram and also my artist name is Coop Mandala. So that's CoopMahdala. You can find some of my solo songs on Spotify, and then I also just put out my first full-length album. It's currently on Bandcamp under that same name. And then, Psilosapiens is on all streaming platforms as well. Just really beautiful, conscious. Yeah, I guess that's the simplest way to put it. Just conscious hip-hop.
Dude, I love it, man. Are you, I just got to ask this. Are you aware of Free Soul? I'm sure you know Free Soul, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's one of my favorites in the
Yeah, he's really making some waves out there and really finding a really cool niche. And really, really doing and being a big inspiration, especially for the African American community.
Fuck yeah, man.
He's doing an incredible job. Yeah, it's really awesome to witness.
Yeah, that guy's awesome, man. I love his music, and I love his lyrics too, because they're so powerful and they're so positive, but he's still got that G beat to it, It's like, I realized that like, like I love that gangster beat, but I don't exactly like hearing about murdering people and selling drugs, It's like, I've got to move past that, and so it's amazing he's out there, and so many other influential people like yourself, man, like doing really cool stuff. It's going to usher in the next level of evolution when it comes to not just music, but entertainment and, what people are choosing to put in their minds and all that stuff, man. And I think it's just super cool. And Kuba, I have one last question for you, man, that I ask everyone, right? And that question is this. Let's say someone listens to this episode and they're really interested to check out psychedelic medicines and see if they work in their own life. What is the one piece of advice you would give them to be able to allow them to use the proper discernment in choosing whether or not these medicines, these psychedelic medicines, are right for them in their life at this time?
Ah, wow, that's a potent question. My first initial response, honestly, is like, the first one is like, I don't know. We're all on such personal paths, and it's that interesting thing where like I don't want to tell anyone necessarily what to do, because sometimes, you know, this experience is so paradoxical, and sometimes you just gotta be completely ripped apart, and that's the only way. But that initial side, what then comes up is maybe not tread carefully, but like walk with respect. Walk with respect. If you can align with it in a way where you can find a teacher or some sort of experienced guide, I would probably recommend that. Another thing I would recommend is if you can't find that teacher, the greatest teacher always is nature. So I would highly recommend always, especially when doing psychedelic journeys, if you can be in nature, I would highly recommend that personally. And then, yeah, just always with everything we're doing, trying to be as intentional as we can with it, and just really defining your intention of like, why am I doing this? And ideally, most of the time, you're doing it with the intention to like really grow and become a better person. Because again, with all of these psychedelics, just like anything, it can lead to escapism. If it weren't that way, if they really were like just miracle, like everyone, it was just the key, just straight to enlightenment, then like all of those Grateful Dead people, we would have a lot more full on Buddhas out there. But like, that's the other thing, is like they are not the end all be all. They are not going to answer all your questions necessarily. They are going to be teachers. They're going to be friends. They're going to be allies along the way. But ultimately, for me, they have just pointed more and more to like, you are enough. And you really do have everything you need within you. Yes, we can dabble, and it's being altered is awesome, and it's our right. And we all have the right to dance in that realm and to alter our consciousnesses and dance with these different chemicals. But yeah, just tread carefully, and always, yeah, just walk with respect. Walk with respect.
Dude, very sound advice, bro. You know, I completely agree with that. And we talk about it often on the show that in most cases, they're going to leave you with more questions than answers, you know, and, you know, that's because like, just like any good mentor or coach, they're not going to tell you anything. They're going to give you options, and they're going to expect you to make the decision, you know, because with great power comes great responsibility. So, dude, I love that. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Coop is amazing. Make sure you go check out his music, man. He's so awesome. I have so much fun every time I get to chat with this guy, whether it's online, in person. And I'm telling you guys, you're going to absolutely love his music. So definitely go check it out in the show notes. And if you guys loved the episode, we'd so appreciate a 5-star review. Helps us get the show out to more and more of amazing people just like yourself. So wherever you are in the world, guys, I hope you are having the best day ever. And as always, may the force be with you to infinity and beyond. Peace for now, everybody.